So everyone is screaming the top, but history says 70 days before we get a proper decision, of course. If we hold those key levels, if rotation kicks in, it might get very interesting. Today we need to talk about the news because it kind of matters and the exact chart that I'm looking at. But timing could be on our side here, potentially. By the way, smash the like button and create an argument in the comment section. Go on, have a laugh. The S&P, the Nasdaq are all closing in on all-time highs. This is last week's news, right? And that's kind of given us this kind of hope for the rate cuts. However, there's a bit of bad data last week that created a bit of an issue. PPI data was pretty rubbish, inciting that maybe inflation might be going up. There's a little bit of doubt that we actually might get a rate cut in September, but we'll see. But what we do have coming up very, very soon is the Jackson Hole. So that's going to be a lot of buzzwords, a lot of policy elements, and a lot of things mentioned that could be very interesting. So yeah, you can see here the odds of a cut is now at 85%. Now, that was honestly about 99.9% not too long ago. So it has dropped quite a lot. We've obviously got a lot of foreign elements around, obviously, the Russian meeting with obviously Trump. Lots of things happening. But yeah, the Jackson Hole between the 21st and the 23rd of August, it's going to be very interesting because Powell's going to be given some guidance, and that guidance will be big on the macro side of it. And the markets could be leaning towards, a cut, could be buy the rumor, sell the news, but also anything that he says that is a little bit off schedule or off cue might rumble the sentiment market. So just be mindful of that. And obviously, I said the word sentiment, right? As you can imagine, US consumer sentiment weakens because inflation is expectations are higher. That was because the data came in absolutely shocking. It was quite a bad read, and that has made a bit of an issue. So when we talk about how the data has been pretty much skewed, it has rumbled a lot of people, and we could actually be going into a potential risk-off situation, which isn't bad considering we do have a bit of a lull in September. It's usually quite a bad month, September. Well, I know I say that before, but it is one of those things. So we need to keep an eye on it. But let's talk about the ETF inflows, and it has actually been pretty strong. The thing is, the Ethereum one has been very, very strong, and obviously Bitcoin has been pretty strong throughout, the course of the last couple of weeks, as you can see. But obviously, you can see here very, very clearly how aggressive and how quick the world of Ethereum, in terms of their ETF inflows, has really risen. The volume as well on of the exchanges, which I'll showcase in a bit, has increased massively in Ethereum versus what it was, and it has actually, outperformed Bitcoin for the first time in a while. By the way, if you are interested in trading, I'm going to showcase the volume because this is open for UK members. It's open if you want to trade futures. A lot of people ask that. No KYC. There's a link below. You get 20% back on fees and a decent welcome bonus. But let's showcase something because most exchanges right now, Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin. Now, doesn't happen all the time, this, by the way. And that just showcases the strength of obviously Ethereum recently. Yes, you can see the volatility, it's coming back. Obviously, there's a lot of swings in the market. But seeing Ethereum outperforming volume on Bitcoin, that's a biggie. Let's talk a little bit about the past because I think this is important. We need to talk about little bits. And you can talk about the 5 to 10 year composites of rhyming markets of correction, recovery, new highs, correction, recovery, new highs, how the cryptocurrency market and the traditional market and the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 all kind of rhyme. And we are currently on this situation of, a big, massive push to the upside on the S&P 500. We've also had it with Bitcoin recently. Bitcoin obviously marries it a little bit, but altcoins have not went with it just yet, but they're starting to. But when we talk about the world of 2017, if we go back in time quite a bit, back even on this chart here, if we go back to 2017, this is interesting, right? Now, we all talk about how cryptocurrency was absolutely appalling back in those days where it corrected 85% in terms of Bitcoin and it corrected, 99% in Ethereum and all that kind of stuff. But when we look at how this market was moving up and up, and up, and up, and up, and then we obviously corrected. When we talk about how Bitcoin corrected and altcoins had that big run and then did the massive correction, we had these corrections coming in. But realistically, we were still doing the same sort of pattern, i.e. things were looking very, very interesting going into a very, very strong Q4. Now, Q4, we could talk about this quite a lot, and we always have, we always will, is always strong for traditional markets and obviously crypto because we are marrying with that, especially if you talk about Bitcoin as crypto. Altcoins are a bit iffy. So it is somewhat interesting. But what we have right now is a potential streak going into November, and maybe we could probably argue October, November, roughly 70 days where we could get a bit of a run, especially if the S&P holds, or especially if the data isn't too bad, especially if we get rate cuts, right? So there's so many unanswered questions here that could allow us to get a bit of a streak. Now, it's been a long, long time, and you can see it, what I'm going to say. There was a while since we've had a green streak of this long. Green month streak. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 5 currently right now. I know. Currently on this date. Maybe I could refresh it, but we're still mid kind of August. It's been a long time since we've had a period like that where it continues to go green. So yeah, it's not so much a sell signal itself, but it's definitely a thing of timing the risk, especially when it comes to Bitcoin. But I know whenever I mention Bitcoin on my channel, people like scour, not because they've missed it, but the top and bottom is this has been an amazing run, realistically, right? And the pullback tolerance of this chart has been brilliant. Why? Because it's only 20%. And that's important. And we could talk about that to a blue in our face. And 20% drawdowns in the likes of Bitcoin has been quite welcomed. It hasn't been too bad. And a lot of people get very upset when it does pull back, but ultimately it's nowhere near as bad. Structure on this, on the monthly time frame and the weekly time frame, this is a weekly, this is the monthly, absolutely fine, no dramas whatsoever. If you look at the grand scheme of things, this is a rampant bullish market. It's been very, very nice, as you can see. So yeah, when we're looking at this, obviously the dominance of the USD going down. Obviously, you can see how we were respecting the EMA. We're all bullish. It's very nice. Same if you could argue on the weekly time frame as well, looking relatively strong. Can't really argue with it, but ultimately, as you know, altcoins have not behaved in the same way, but that might be changing. But as we talk about rate cuts, even with a cut, the path tends to be buy the rumor, sell the news, right? We have Jackson Hole, as I've said, and that tone and what Jerome Powell says and what tie he's wearing and how he wipes his ass that day will set the tone for maybe the month. Obviously, looking into the future, October, there's still obviously a lot of indecision, and obviously December. Are we going to get one rate cut? Are we going to get no rate cuts? Are we going to get 2 rate cuts? Who knows? It could be very, very interesting over the next couple of months. But let's go back to Bitcoin. Let's have a little look at the overall grand scheme of things and look at the bigger time frames. And we have had a new all-time high, right? Problem is, we have not sustained, which is somewhat irritating. And going back to my content about August and stuff, and we've had some very big bouts of volatility. Normally, August is a bit not the greatest of months, and we have had a situation where we are having that volatility. That could be good for traders, but realistically, we're at a situation where we are pulling back. Not, I wouldn't say aggressively, but from the overall wick here to where we are, we're down about roughly 7.5-ish%. Not too bad, realistically, in the grand scheme of things. But again, I'm still labeling this area as a big, interesting area, about $113,000, which sounds mental, and $110,000 around this area where we could well get liquidity. I still think there's a bit of FOMO in the market. I still think people are starting to FOMO in. And I do believe we are coming towards that last squirt up to the upside. And I know people don't like that. Now, there's obviously a little bit of like element around Bitcoin in terms of how it will consolidate and how, big the pullbacks will be, what will happen in terms of the overall picture. And I'm going to say it, and I know people are going to hate it, but what if we don't get those big aggressive pullbacks into a bear market and we are going to see more and more people buy because they want it because numbers go up, right? But saying that though, what I will say is there's probably going to be situations where things will blow up. They always do, over leverage, whatever. So just be mindful of that. My biggest concern more than anything isn't Bitcoin, it's actually Ethereum. Now, Ethereum has, as you know, finally broken up to the upside. That's great. It's going to pull back. I do think we're going to go towards, much, much higher levels in my personal viewpoint. Now, have we kind of like justified the fact of breaking the all-time high? No, we just missed it by a pube basically on your bollock, literally. So it's one of those ones where we've had a retest of it, but we haven't really showcased where we could go. Whether we pull back into this zone here is another situation. Maybe, possibly, yes. But I imagine around 4K, there's going to be a lot of money there sitting because I do feel a lot of people do have a bit of FOMO with Ethereum, and you can see the volume on the futures market. Obviously, people will be getting liquidated left, right, and center because it happens. So yeah, we need to look at that. 3-day time frame looks pretty interesting in terms of where we could be going. So I would bet that a lot of people are going to be buying in and around this area, and we could be going for that leg up. Whether we go towards 5,200 or even higher is another situation. Personally, I'll be looking for $6,000 as a potential target right now in terms of this situation overall, because what I would be looking at is the overall cycle situation from the high to the low, where we're going to go. Well, there's the all-time high, there's the extension levels, there's another extension level. There would be my target's personal opinion. But that being said, we needed to push. We needed to go higher. We need those Ethereum, ETF inflows to flash up and keep flashing and to continue going higher. But realistically, we've got that big, massive, juicy level of resistance which is broken to the upside. Now it'll be acting as support. That's going to be key. But overall, the Bitcoin dominance is dropping. That is good to see, which takes obviously a bit of time to happen. I'm going to just remove the noise of this chart a little bit because I think it's easy to look at, but we probably are going to see a bit of a push to the upside again on this. And that's fine. Altcoins will obviously correct. And then hopefully we go back into this box and hopefully go lower. That needs Bitcoin to continue. Other slash BTC is still below this area, so I'm not really panicking for altcoin positions currently. I still believe there's a lot of opportunities in the futures market. As I say, jumping, bluffing, you get your fees back and stuff like that, which is important when you are trying to trade these fucking things. Now, what I will say, just mentioned it, we are still pretty early to the altcoin market. There's a couple of things that are popping off. They are still, in my opinion, still low in value, especially in the BTC pairs and others.D. But realistically, you look at other total 3 slash BTC, we are still here. We've only just broken character. This is looking good, but we need to really get going and marching forward. And as that trend gets stronger, it will become even more apparent. And feel free to jump in Patreon. Patreon has a lot of knowledge at the minute in terms of alt seasons and obviously poly market stuff, which is pretty mental. If you want to jump in, it's 90% off for your first month. Use code FREE90. Jump in. It's pretty good. But the sad reality to this market is a lot of people will get destroyed on these one little pullbacks or the two little pullbacks that we're going to get. This market is volatile. We will always get pullbacks. And regardless of what people think, we look at the dominance of the USD. We are creating new lows, right? We probably are going to pull back and hopefully we go back lower. It is never going to be a one trick ride. It's never going to be that one trade to the upside and make you loads of money. Even though we are seeing the Ethereum.D rise, even though we're seeing even Solana.D kind of consolidating in an area, we still haven't had that full rotation of money going into altcoins. I still think there's a lot of people looking at Bitcoin. There's a lot of people looking at Ethereum right now, but that hasn't fully rotated over just yet. But it definitely is starting to show showcases of a kind of like a supply of stable currencies, fiat's rising supply of it and a fall in dominance. And it gives you that kind of altcoins could run if the environment is right. But with a Bitcoin that is volatile, it becomes a bit of an issue. So if in my opinion, if Bitcoin remained at these levels up here, I think altcoins would have had a much nicer, neater performance and it would have been a little bit easier to kind of manage. And the overall viewpoint, quite simply, in terms of the risk barometer, is we are still at the greedy stage. We're at 60 now. We have come down quite a lot over the last couple of days, which isn't too bad. But realistically, this is still not great. This isn't the best indicator in the world. Just got to keep an eye on it. But for me, could be very, very interesting to see where we fall down to. So in terms of what I'm doing, and I know I've talked about this before, we need to talk more about that Ethereum pair. And when we talk about Ethereum slash BTC, this is still doing really well. I'm looking for altcoins that do this. I think that's going to be pretty interesting. Now, the situation we have 3 options. There's 3 triggers. You know that this is one of them. You know that the total 3 slash BTC and the dominance.D is always going to be hugely important for the USD pairs. The problem we have is where do they go? I'm personally picking on the obvious, right? I know people hate that. I know people are always looking for the 10, 20, 50 X's, but personally, I'm trading futures. I'm treating it like sport. I'm going to ride the trend. I'm going to ride momentum because when that momentum comes, it will just go. The problem is what could kill this short term is the Jackson Hole tone, hot inflation expectations, or a supplies ETF outflow wave. That could really kill the volatility. Not to mention, as I mentioned before in previous videos, September can be a bit iffy. It can be quite a lot of red. It can be quite a lot of green. It just fucking depends on what way around your pants are going that day. So we need to keep very, very mindful. But for me, I'm willing to bet on the futures market on a couple of the obvious altcoins when the parameters are right. So as I say, let's go through the triggers. The trigger is obviously, is Ethereum.D or the Ethereum / BTC pair trending up? That's one tick in the box. Now for me, the total 3 / BTC is this bad boy. We need the rest of the market to go against Bitcoin and to outperform Bitcoin. Those breakouts, that follow through, it needs to carry on. But again, when we talk about that in conjunction with this nuking itself and falling lower, right? Those are the obvious. Now, for me, when I look at my overall landscape of how I do it, I talk about this more on Patreon, especially on my Tuesday videos. I will always look for the trend. I will always look for the momentum. But there's nothing wrong with picking certain big cap coins because you want to favor the big caps. You want to favor the liquidity because those metrics I just showcased, they're going to follow them more. Look at how well Chainlink's been doing recently, right? It's an obvious one because of the news, but it's an Ethereum-led token. It's done fantastic, as you can see, and it has saved a lot of people's portfolios. I was long in this a couple of weeks ago. As you remember, I took my profit and ran. I should have stayed in it, but that is ultimately down to me. Also, I was kind of mishmashing between my strategy at the time. But realistically, overall, this has been following the market pretty well, especially with the Ethereum side of it. We need more of this to happen. And when it does happen, it will be very, very obvious. So yeah, in terms of my base case, I think August, September could be somewhat consolidation for certain things, but ultimately the structure needs to hold. Late Q3, you can argue into Q4, can produce a strong last leg, as we've seen before in previous markets. I'm keeping my hand away from the trigger until we see full confirmations. Realistically, I have a simple trading strategy. I don't want to be in too much drawdown, especially through the volatility, the downward days, but we could be starting to see that risk curve change in Q4, hopefully. But yeah, if you enjoy this sort of thing, leave a like. Hopefully I've helped you make some decisions and figure out what to do. And if you want more of it, obviously hit the subscribe button. Jump in Patreon if you want more extra videos. And yeah, watch this video here. It may help you in terms of exit strategies.